Hey, welcome back to Sketch Today. I'm Spencer, and today we'll be sketching wristwatches. Specifically, we'll be looking at sketching a stainless steel link bracelet style watch using one tool and one tool only, and that'll be pencils. So this will be the first in a series of sketches about watches. You can look for those here and there if you subscribe to the channel, but for now, let's get right into it. So the first thing I need to do if I'm going to sketch a watch is just kind of think about the main components of the watch. So for example, if I have a quick sketch here of the front view of my watch, okay, we have the parts of the watch that would accept the link bracelet, like so. Okay, just nice and loose and rough. We've got the face, for example, and we've got a dial to adjust time. From the side view, okay, we can sketch that out from the side. We've got our face, our bracelet, or strap, whatever you want to call it. And we've got our adjustment mechanism right here. Okay, and we've got the back of the watch. And back to that bracelet. Now, strategically thinking about how I want to present this thing is really important because potentially there's a lot of complexity here to show as you're sketching the watch. Okay, there's the face itself, which is divided into 12 equal parts, so we can divide those out, for example, and just decide on a specific design that you want. I'm just kind of marking these out right here for now. And on this particular design, I'm going to keep my design fairly simple. Okay, there's a nice second hand. Because in this thumbnail view, I can't really capture all the detail that I want to capture in the watch. So the first thing is to draw an ellipse. Well, actually decide on how you want to show that concept of the watch, whether it's in a perspective, something like this, or if it's a perspective, something like this. And the difference being that the ellipse that would be used to describe the front of the watch would be positioned differently depending on how we decide to show that concept, okay? So, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and sketch my watch face in a perspective that's described by a box something like this. Okay, and if it is an ellipse, it needs to be in a square. So that just helps me get my proportion. And I'm using a very thin pencil, okay, and drawing with my shoulder. Remember, by drawing with your shoulder, I mean locking your wrist right here and pivoting using your shoulder and your elbow. But the entire time, your wrist needs to be locked. Otherwise, you'll have really messy lines. So there I've defined the bezel and also working to define some thickness on my watch. And so now I can kind of come off these edges, nice and tangent right here. Okay, and taper like so. And start to define where these supports for the link bracelet will be. Okay, do the same thing on the opposite sides, just kind of touch here, over here, right? And because this is moving away from us in perspective, this length, right, needs to be wider in the front, shorter in the back because of perspective. Alright, so there we have our bezel. Now if I just offset another ellipse back here, it should be enough to define where the face goes. And so now I can start to sketch in, right, divide this into 4 equal parts, and then 12, like so. Nice and light till you get it right. Okay, and don't have to get super you don't have to get super detailed rather on these pieces, but try to capture the essence of what you're after. So on my 12, 3, 6, and 9 markers, I have a little bit more pronounced detail than I do on the other parts of my watch. So now, right in here, let's zoom in so you can see a little clearer, more clearly rather. I am creating the region where my hour and second hand and minute hand would be. And just to keep it interesting, I'm positioning those at different points. So the next thing I need to do is kind of define what my bezel looks like. And I'm going to do this kind of scalloped thing here. So kind of marked, or using rather as reference, where my markers are on the face to then determine where these scallops reside, because I've already done the work, right? And now just a couple lines. Actually, I'm gonna keep that round and keep these faceted. Keep that face nice and smooth, okay? So it's almost like these got machined flat on the face of my watch. And we'll use some line weight to clean this up rather, okay? But we also have our dial, okay, or crown that needs to be in here. So I'm adding just these two little details, and then with the section of an ellipse, I can show where my crown would be, okay? So just offsetting a few ellipses. Now for the band itself, you could, if you wanted to, draw a nice big ellipse, like so. Let's zoom out here. So I could draw a nice big ellipse really lightly to kind of define the shape of this band, okay? But because there's so much detail and complexity, and I'd like to keep this short for you guys this time, you can actually almost atmospherically render. So if you watched my shoe video last time where we had a shoe rendering, and on that rendering we kind of tapered out on the color, we can kind of do the same thing here with the line weight or line work if we want to. So what I'm doing right now is just sketching in kind of roughly just the shapes of these links, okay? And you can kind of decide what your shape's gonna be for your links depending on your design. Maybe it's something you've worked out on your thumbnail or otherwise, but in my case I'm just kind of designing as I go on the fly, okay? And just trying to make sure that these links, of course, follow rules of perspective, okay? And again, this is just sketched in really lightly with our pencil. So all these lines, right, as they go out, they should look like they converge. And because this is a link bracelet, there's an intermediary piece here that needs to be sketched in. So just going ahead, sketching these in, I now have my links, okay, on my bracelet. So now this should start to look a little bit familiar, okay? And it's really about, by it I mean this process is about understanding the product or the object and trying to rough out the entire object as far as the main descriptive elements go, and then breaking those elements up into functional groups. Okay, so we sketch the general form, break that up, and then add the details. And that's where the magic kind of happens, okay? So just continuing the links through here, and I'm gonna go ahead and start to fade this out, especially toward the band. One, because I haven't done my homework, I'll admit, and I'm not entirely sure what that looks like. But two, just to keep the drawing nice and light and loose, okay, I'm gonna kind of leave this area a little less defined. So for you horologists or watch fanatics out there, my apologies. I'm just going to leave that for now. We may come back and revisit that as we progress through the sketch. But that's how I would start to lay out my watch sketch. Okay, so right now this probably looks really light or not really defined, confident enough. So the next step would be to then add some line weight to this entire drawing. And that's going to help everything we're doing here just read even better. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and add something in here. And like I said, it may not be entirely accurate, but representative of perhaps what this band could look like, or a closure mechanism. Clasp. Okay, so now I'm switching to my Prismacolor Premier pencils, and I can focus on things like some nice shading to represent the material and punching my line weight and so forth. So first thing is always try and rotate your paper to an angle that is comfortable for you. And in this case, I've kind of rotated a little bit off axis here, and I'm also rotating my pencil. And this will help keep the tip of my pencil somewhat sharp as I sketch, because these Prismacolor Premier pencils, they like to wear down pretty quickly. So as I'm doing this, you'll notice that I am shading in what I would consider to be reflections in the environment as we go. So because this is stainless steel or even chrome or some shiny material, I'm going to get some pretty sharp reflections in my environment. And so my shading needs to reflect the materiality of those materials. So same thing on the crown, or bezel rather. Okay, as I sketch that in. And I did say as you sketch this in that I would lock my wrist, and you're probably thinking, he's a liar, he said he would lock his wrist. But for a small area like this, okay, I tend to use my wrist for shading and other things. But in general, generally speaking, you want to use your shoulder as you draw, and you'll have a lot cleaner drawing for it, okay? Okay, now it's really important to be careful as you do this. You'll notice that there are a couple spots already that are starting to show where I've rested my hand on the paper a little too much, but that's okay. If you just hold your pencil a little bit further away from the tip, kind of helps keep your hand off of your work. Okay, so you can see there my wrist is down here, which allows me to shade and do my line work without impacting the drawing in a messy way. Pretty cool. So that's just one of those subtle things that I do to help keep my work clean. But I did forget in this instance, so I'm kind of suffering a little bit from my negligence in this case. Okay, and as we get to the front here, I'm going to also add, some other dark spots in this bezel to show that I'm reflecting elements in the environment. And that element could be me, could be you know, the camera, it could be a wall, it could be a light. This is just a symbolic representation of what those things are, okay? And I forgot to mention, but in case you're wondering what kind of paper I'm using a marker paper. And the reason I'm using a marker paper is not to actually apply marker, but rather marker paper has a nice tooth to it, which results in a really nice feel to the pencil as it's applied to the drawing. So I actually really like using pencil on marker paper. Vellum is kind of the same way as well, but you know, just find what works for you and use that, and you'll be in really good shape. Okay, so here my pencil is now flat, and I need to show just a little reflectivity, okay, on this support for my band. And turning the pencil on the side also gives me an opportunity for some subtle shading as well. So here, for example, as I'm blending, okay, I can come in with my pencil like so. If I want to show a reflection in the case on the top, sometimes I like to outline that with my pencil. And then on the opposite side of my reflection, kind of shade in just a little bit of darkness. And that'll kind of help obscure some of the detail on the inside as well. But I'll try and pull that through where it makes sense. Okay.